build your first machine learning project together because it's a lot simpler than you think. If I did my best to describe machine learning to you in just one sentence, I would call it a process where we teach a computer to make predictions without hard coding every single thing it needs to know. Today, we're building a machine learning model that predicts the amount of points a football team will score based on the number of first downs. The very first step is always to import our libraries, and you might be wondering how to figure out which libraries you need for a given machine learning project. Well, you can refer to this guide, but also remember the main 4 libraries: Pandas for arrays, NumPy to work with numbers and math, Matplotlib to visualize your data, and scikit-learn for our machine learning toolbox. Today, we'll need NumPy, a few tools from scikit-learn, and Matplotlib to make a pretty cool graph. Something to remember is that before you import your libraries for the very first time, you will have to permanently install them in your terminal just once. Now we've moved into the training phase. When you're training a machine learning model, you must begin by feeding the model data to learn from. Take a look at this example data in the format of a table. The X column represents the inputs, and the Y column represents the outputs or labels that correspond to the X value. In our machine learning model, we've made a tiny dataset with just 10 points. The inputs are labeled X and show the amount of first downs each team got in the game. On the other hand, the list of outputs is called Y, and each one labels the corresponding X value with the amount of points that team scored. Now that we have our dataset, we're going to split it into 2 categories: training data and testing data. Training data is what the model sees during the training stage, and it helps it learn the pattern between the amount of first downs and the amount of points scored. Then, after the model is trained, we run it on the testing data to see how well it performs on top secret data that it's never seen before. In machine learning, we usually take 80% of the data for training and keep the other 20% for testing, so we're staying consistent with that today. Now it's time to actually train the machine learning model, and even though this just looks like one tiny line of code, it is the most important part of the model. Today we're using a linear regression model, which is going to learn the relationship between the amount of first downs and points scored and draw a line of best fit through the data. The model uses the typical slope-intercept form y equals mx plus b that we've all learned and chooses the variables m and b to get the line as close to the data as possible. So with this line of code, our model is doing exactly those calculations but for our dataset. Now that we have a fully trained model, we're going to use it. This is where our top secret test data comes in, but it's actually not so top secret anymore because we're feeding it to the model. We're feeding the model only the inputs from the test data and then asking it to predict the outputs to the best of its ability. Now it's time to see how well the model actually did. We're comparing the model's guesses to the true value using an evaluation method called mean squared error. We take each model's prediction minus the true value to get an error and then square that value. Once we have all the errors counted up, we take the average, and that final number is the mean squared error. We want a lower mean squared error because that means the model's predicted line stayed closer to the data and had less error. The final step is to take a look at our results. We're using Matplotlib to visualize our data, and the results are very expected. It looks like as the amount of first downs increases, so does the amount of points scored. But we can even ask the model to predict how many points a team will score based on the number of first downs. So let's try this for 10 first downs. We asked the model to predict based on this value, and it looks like it's giving us 6.5 points. So a team with 10 first downs will score about 6.5 points, and that's machine learning in its simplest form for you. Make sure you save this video for your first machine learning model and follow for more.